Happy New Year, YouTube! I'm kicking off my new year with a Mega Man 1 video, aka Rockman, aka I was too lazy to get the American ROM, so I got the Japanese one instead. It was already on my hard drive, so whatever. So it should be no secret that I am a huge fan of the Mega Man series, and this footage, I was actually planning on doing this video back in October, but it's just been sitting on my hard drive for so long, so I decided, now's the time, I'm not doing much else. Yeah, let's get right into it. So I'm selecting Gutsman stage first. Now, Mega Man 1 is very, very infamous for being very loud. I apologize if this sound hurts your ears, but there's nothing I can do about it because there is an unnecessarily loud noise going along with the infamous Gutsman lifts. This is the first of many moments in Mega Man 1 that were probably too hard for their own good. I mean, I'm making it look easy here, but it takes a little while to learn the timing of those platforms because they just drop you the instant they connect with those little purple lines. That wasn't too fantastic to do as a kid. Mega Man 1 tends to get overshadowed by Mega Man 2 quite a lot because, well, Mega Man 2 is a very significant step up from Mega Man 1, but Mega Man 1 is just, like, old. It really shows its age. Like, there's a lot of bugs, there's a lot of gameplay stuff that wouldn't really fly in Mega Man 2. I mean, this game keeps score. That's what the numbers at the top of the screen are. That's your score. And in this area, we have a bunch of items hanging around in ledges that are really hard to get to. Like, I have no idea how you're supposed to get to that extra life without a certain power-up later on in the game. And this enemy, this is a particularly infamous enemy because it's always right outside the boss room, and it's very hard to avoid. You have to get really lucky and hope that it jumps. If I'd started shooting at it, it probably would have been dead before it hit me because it took a while to decide to do a high jump instead of a low jump. But yeah. Not exactly a very fair enemy because you have to get lucky and hope that it jumps high so you go under it. So we've entered the boss door, and this is the only game in the Mega Man series, I think, to have enemies in the little antechamber before the boss room. So here's the first boss we're taking on, Gutsman. He is very annoying because when he jumps, he shakes the room, and that causes you to be stunned for a little bit, and that can be very hard to deal with because it's very hard to avoid being stunned. You have to be in the air for the entire duration of the shaking animation to avoid getting stunned, and meanwhile he's throwing rocks at you. Very, very annoying. I actually took a death there because I didn't come into this fight with full health. If I go into it with full health, then it's pretty much a freebie because I can just damage race him. Damage racing is basically the go-to method for most bosses in Mega Man 1. Actually, that's a lie, and it's only, like, the ideal method for one or two of them, but whatever. So, bosses in Mega Man, like, the Mega Man games were notable back in the day for allowing you to choose the order that you fight the bosses in. And that was pretty novel at the time because every boss would give you a weapon, and the weapons do different amounts of damage to the different bosses, so there's a sort of weakness order. Like, this is all common for anybody who's played a Mega Man game these days. But I started on Gutsman because I don't think the weapon that's supposed to be good against him is really that good against him at all. Because in order to capitalize on the extra damage, you have to actually hit the boss. And the weapon that he's weak to is not very good at that. So Gutsman's down. We're moving on to Cutman because, as we all know, rock beats scissors. This has a double meaning because Gutsman's weapon lets you throw rocks like the ones on this screen right here, as I will demonstrate. And also because in Japan, the character's name is Rockman, not Mega Man. Yeah, somebody was a fan of rock and roll, so that's how that happened, because there's another character named Roll who keeps her name in the American localizations, so that's gotta be very weird to have somebody just named Roll. What even is that name? Anyways, Gutsman's weapon lets you throw bricks like the ones on that screen just now, which means that it's a very situational weapon because the game needs to actually provide you with the bricks to throw, and this is on top of the weapon not only having its own ammo count, like you can actually run out of ammo on this thing, technically, but I've never seen anyone run out of ammo because there's usually not nearly enough bricks to throw, and not to mention that the bricks that you throw are so inaccurate anyways when they explode into those little bits. They're really hard to aim too, so it's really a weird weapon, but it does have its uses. Mostly against bosses and stuff. So what are we, like halfway through Cutman stage and we've only seen one real enemy that fits the scissors theme. I guess they weren't banking hard on the stage themes back in the day, but like, It was the first Mega Man game. It's going to be rough around the edges. It's like Super Mario Bros. 1. Even though it's such a classic, it's still kind of like overshadowed by other games. Well, actually, Super Mario Bros. 1 isn't really overshadowed by anything because they keep throwing back to it. With the Mega Man games, they keep throwing back to Mega Man 2 in more annoying ways than 1, I'll admit, but yeah. So yeah, Mega Man 2 definitely a very huge improvement on the first, but I'm doing this first game because it makes better sense to start your video series on game 1, I guess. Like, who would start with the second game? Well, I guess anybody playing the Street Fighter series would. Street Fighter 1 was kind of bad too. That's also a Capcom game, so this might be just common for the company. Anyways, getting back on topic, is basically a lot of basic enemies throughout Cutman stage. Like, this thing that spits out scissors is really easy to avoid. You just walk past it. I mean, it might as well not even be there. It's never going to hit anybody who decides to just rush right through. And that's one of the annoying quirks in Mega Man 1, actually. The power-up that the enemy dropped, just shunting out of the solid space. Also, I just jumped through the top of the screen and ended up on the bottom because that's a bug that happens with ladders. I think that's the only real place you're allowed to do it, but hey. So, this time around, I actually have a way of dealing with a giant enemy in front of the boss door. You just toss a couple bricks at it. So that's one good use of Gutsman's weapon. Here's another annoying fact about the weapon, though. If you throw a brick and then die, when you come back to where the brick was, it won't respawn, unless you get a game over. So that's going to be very annoying if you plan on using this weapon against Cutman, because there are only 2 bricks in his room that you can throw at him, but real men just use the Rock Buster anyways, because, you know, if I make the Rock Beat Scissors pun anymore than this, it's going to get very annoying. So anyways, Cutman's not a difficult boss to deal with. You just gotta keep track of both him and the scissors that he throws, which acts like a boomerang. He does seem to be a bit jumpy in this fight, though, but still. That was not a very difficult fight because Cutman takes a lot of damage from your regular blaster. See, the thing is, all of the bosses take varying amounts of damage from even the basic weapon you start the game with, which I don't think is a very good design decision because it kind of kills the idea of being able to choose the stages in any order you want. I mean, it's great that you can play the stages in any order you want, but if the boss, say, takes more damage from the Buster than other bosses do, then you're kind of inclined to choose that boss first. And then there's a Lechman stage, which, you know, if you come in here without the rolling cutter, which is the weapon I'm using, these enemies are very annoying and difficult to destroy. The jumps to get up to this first ladder are so hard that you might actually lose all your lives in that first room if you're a beginner. This game is not kind to beginners, I must say. Even I still struggle with this game from time to time when on the rare occasion that I go back and play it. I mean, there's an entire song written by a Japanese band dedicated to how hard Mega Man 1 is. That is how difficult it is. Anyways, coming up is yet another one of Mega Man 1's very annoying features that unfortunately returns throughout the series quite a lot. Disappearing bricks. Now, you are supposed to jump on these in order to advance through the stage, and these ones are kind of okay, but as you can see, you kind of have to memorize the pattern to know where you're supposed to jump, and you have to get the timing down too. One of the most annoying features in Mega Man history, and they keep bringing it back just for nostalgia, and to annoy me. Yeah. They do a lot to annoy you in Mega Man games. And speaking of annoying jumps, that power-up there, I have no idea how you're supposed to get it and then get out of that little nook in the corner there. Because most of the time when you try to jump out of that little nook, you'll hit your head on the ceiling and then plummet to your doom. So, very annoying to get out of that jump. I think it's supposed to be a beginner's trap. And we have more of the annoying enemies. This is actually one of the rare path splits in the early Mega Man games because you can choose the left column or the right column, and the right column is probably even more annoying. And that block in the very center of the screen there can actually be thrown with Gutsman's weapon, so you can change paths if you want. Of course, this is the end of the path anyways. Now, that was weird. I picked up a block but didn't really pick it up. Very strange bug, but you need Gutsman's weapon to pick up that item there. That is the Magnet Beam, which is a power-up that is not optional. You have to get this or you cannot complete the game. Under normal circumstances anyways. The speedrunners may have found a glitch or something to get past the screens where you need it. And here we have another annoying trap. These little electric laser things cannot be passed by any means other than waiting for them to disappear. Kind of annoying because you have to just sit and wait, and nobody likes sitting and waiting when it's not their choice to do so. So this is the magnet beam. It lets you make platforms that are just barely visible with this video quality, I'm guessing. So yeah, the magnet beam is really cool because it lets you pass a lot of annoying jumps. And here we have an enemy that I was actually lucky enough to rush under while he was jumping very high. So that's what you kind of have to hope happens. I guess you could maybe sit on the ladder and wait for him to jump off the cliff to his doom, but I never really tried that. How very strange. I should really try that sometime. Anyways, we have more ladders with more of these annoying things that you just have to wait and pass. Why is it a giant ladder? What is this, Metal Gear Solid 3? Like, I'm gonna think of that game every time I come across a giant ladder, but here's Elecman. Now, he is very difficult to deal with because he can actually destroy you in just 3 hits with that lightning attack of his. So that's why I brought the rolling cutter here. It can also destroy him in 3 hits, and it's very easy to deal with him once you have done it a couple of times with the rolling cutter. So yeah, that's not really a great boss because your regular shots do only 1 damage while he is able to destroy you in 3 hits. Yeah, that's very poorly designed. It really deters the idea that you can choose the stages in any order you want, because without the rolling cutter, that's a very difficult fight. There's a way to deal with it, of course. You can kind of manipulate his AI into just doing the same thing over and over again, but a beginner's not going to find that out. Yeah, so moving on to Iceman stage, which has ice physics. Minor ice physics anyways. Throughout the Mega Man series, if you run into ice physics, just remember it. Jump and you will not slide. Very simple. We also have water. I don't think it affects your jump height though. Normally, being in water allows you to jump higher, but not in Mega Man 1. And I've been using the Thunder Beam. That's Elecman's weapon. The Thunder Beam is nice because it fires in 3 directions. Unfortunately, the horizontal beam, the one that fires horizontally, it has a couple of hit detection issues because, you know, it moves in that really weird wavy pattern, and sometimes it just misses the enemy completely. At least that's what it looks like. Alright, so Iceman stage goes heavy on the disappearing bricks, and as you can see, I briefly forgot what the pattern was because I haven't played this in so long, but here's what the pattern is. You jump to the right first, and then you wait for this brick to the left and up, and there you go. That pattern is simple. But there's another one right after it, and this one is not kind at all, so we're going to skip it using the magnet beam, which I placed too high on the screen, so we need to shoot it again. Yeah, watching your magnet beam ammo is pretty important, because coming up we have another section that you're likely to skip with a magnet beam. Now, these platforms might look all sweet and innocent, but they also shoot at you, and they are completely glitched, because if you take damage from their shots, you will actually fall right through the platform. The platform has no hit detection if you have invincibility frames, and that is awful because if one unlucky shot hits you, you're gone. You fall off, you lose a life, you have to do the section over again, and there's an extra life that I have no idea how to get, because it seems that once you've fallen off the platform there, you just fall too fast in order to grab the ledge. Alright, so the Thunder Beam should be a much more powerful weapon for dealing with this guy. And it is! So it seems like the best plan is to take on the stages that give you good weapons for that enemy first, so that you can deal with him better. Anyways, we have more enemies to deal with. These penguins respawn infinitely, by the way. There are a couple enemies like that. And now we have Iceman to deal with. Like Elecman, he's very difficult because he can kill you in 3 hits. But his pattern is much more predictable, because he will always fire the Ice Slasher, that's the weapon name. He will always fire his weapon in that same pattern over and over again, so even though I lost a life here because I want all of my health back, it's very easy to, well, it's not easy because you have to deal with the hit detection, but, it's possible at least. It's not, like, completely impossible because Elecman was just completely unpredictable. But no, we're going to use his weakness against him. You know, when I was recording this, I kind of wanted to, like, avoid using the weakness weapons because they kind of destroy any sort of difficulty these guys had, but the difficulty that they do have is so through the roof that I thought, okay, I may as well just do what's going to be more visually pleasing instead of just, like, frustrating myself. So yeah. Moving on, we are going to pick Bomb Man's stage first. It's not the next one in the weakness order, but Fireman is very difficult. Again, a lot of these stages are more difficult than I give them credit for. Alright, Bomb Man. I have no idea what the things in the background are supposed to be. They look like towers with spherical structures on top. I've never understood the stage. They don't look like giant bombs, which you'd think this is what it's supposed to be. And we have a game over. So, I game overed myself intentionally there because, well, first you probably wanted to see what a game over looked like. Second, you do not get your lives back when you pass a stage. So you start the game with 3 lives, and once those are all gone, it's game over, but you don't get your lives back after completing a stage, which means that the next stage you go into, you only have, like, however many lives you left the previous stage with. So that game over was to give myself 3 lives. Yeah. Like, there's no real penalty for it. I mean, you lose all of your points, but no one really cares about points in Mega Man 1. I mean, after you complete the game, you can actually keep replaying the final stage over and over again for more and more points until you max out the score counter, and then I don't know what happens after that. Hey, we have another famous Mega Man enemy. This guy is called a Sniper Joe, and I'm going to freeze him in place with the Ice Slasher and then just walk right past him, because Sniper Joes are incredibly annoying, and I had no idea you could freeze that enemy while it was blocking. It normally blocks your shots. So the great thing about the Ice Slasher is you can freeze an enemy and then shoot at it with another weapon. An annoying quirk to the early Mega Man games is that you cannot switch weapons while a projectile from your current weapon is still on the screen. But the Ice Slasher, even after it leaves the screen, the enemy is still frozen. And freezing enemies like this one is very advantageous because this Bullet Bill looking enemy respawns on the other side of the screen as soon as it leaves. There are a couple of enemies that act like that, like this guy right here. So you just freeze him, and then you can move on and not have to deal with him at all because he'll never respawn and just stay in that position. And that's also good too because, like, I also managed to snag that one up, but you can actually, if you're able to make the jump off that ledge and off to the left, you can actually farm infinite 1-ups. Anyways, so I'll just freeze this Sniper Joe and then move past. Ooh, that looked like I was just barely able to get by without hitting him. So we have a ladder going down, which is better than the ladder going up, I suppose. Now, if only I had managed to avoid getting hit there. Alright, so we're up to the boss, Bomb Man. Now, he is a pretty easy to exploit AI quirk. If you are very close to him, then he is more likely to jump. If you are far away from him, he's just going to throw your bombs. So he's very predictable in that sense. Of course, if he starts throwing a bomb, then there's no way to get him to stop and jump. But still, very easy enemy to defeat. He takes 2 damage from your Buster Shots, which is more than Iceman and Elecman. So with him gone, we only have one more stage to deal with. He is normally weak to Fireman's weapon, but we're saving Fireman for last because Fireman is a very difficult stage and boss. Of course, you've got so many difficult stages, like, it's crazy how hard Mega Man 1 is, even compared to Mega Man 2. I kind of like the music, though. The music in the Mega Man series is always very, very good. Like, Mega Man 2 is just a smash hit as far as music goes, and then it gets better and better with 3 and 4, but 1 is still pretty cool, especially when you use a Game Genie on this game, because it causes all of the music to get very squeaky. I have no idea why it gets so squeaky when you use a Game Genie on it. But unfortunately, when you use an emulator, you kind of have to intentionally trigger the squeaky music, because emulators, they can input cheat codes without giving you the squeaky music, which you have to go through that extra step to make it work, I guess, if you really want to hear the squeaky music. Alright, so this stage, Iceman's weapon lets you freeze the columns of fire that appear in this stage. It's not very useful because you have to time it very specifically in order to make a decent platform, but it does let you get past... Oh, I have no idea why I'm using the magnet beam just to pass over that one tiny little jump. So yeah, freezing those fire towers can be helpful sometimes. Not always, though. Alright then. Now, actually, it would be pretty useful to freeze them here, because, you know, if you get hit, it's very possible that a knockback will send you into the lava for an instant kill, Castlevania style. I also forgot to mention something very annoying about Mega Man 1. This is the only Mega Man game where your invincibility frames do not save you from spikes. And there's going to be a lot of areas later on in the game that exploit that. So I have no idea how you're supposed to get past those fire waves without taking damage. I think you're just supposed to run through and then use your invincibility frames to get by, but I used a magnet beam to avoid damage. Unavoidable damage if you do not have the magnet beam. Very bad design choice in today's time. Of course, there were a lot of bad design decisions from today's point of view, but, you know, hopefully they've learned their lesson and will not do stupid things like that ever again. For those of you who kind of know what I'm alluding to, you know, whatever. Let's just move on. So coming up is Fireman. He is a very difficult boss to figure out. Like all of the other bosses so far, you can kind of figure out how they move. Fireman, I just don't know what you're supposed to do with this guy. Because, like, I think he fires off those waves of flames as many times as you fire your buster, but look at how crazy he's doing. It seems like the best way to deal with him is to just, you know, damage race him. Just deal with, you know, the damage, come in with a full health bar, and then just mash the button at him. I mean, if you use the Ice Slasher, it's slightly faster. I think the Ice Slasher does 4 damage, while the regular buster does 2. So that's not really a huge improvement. But anyways, with all 6 bosses defeated, we can move on to Dr. Wily's stages. Now, normally in Mega Man games, there's 8 bosses, but this first one just has 6. Oh, and here's the very first time Dr. Wily ever did the eyebrow thing. It was fleeting, but it was still pretty awesome. There's also no map of the castle like in the later games. Anyways, the Dr. Wily stages, they just go completely crazy with the difficulty. This is like, if you got past the first 6 stages, tutorial completed, now it's time for the real fun. So we start with just a bunch of the same enemy over and over again. You just freeze them with the Ice Slasher, and then if they did a high jump, then you can just move under them. But if they did a low jump like this, you have to try and destroy them. I'm attempting to use Bomb Man's weapon here. You can see that it's completely awful because it takes so long to actually destroy this guy. Like, it takes so long for it to actually explode. It's probably the worst weapon in the game. Even the Super Arm is better than that. And of course, since I went too far to the left, this enemy is going to respawn again, so I have to destroy him again. Or I could just get hit and move on. Either way, I didn't handle that nearly as elegantly as I should have, because I was trying to give the Hyper Bomb a day in the limelight here. And of course, we have fire pillars here. Now, you're actually supposed to use the mechanic of freezing them with Ice Slasher, but it can be just a little bit tricky to do. You have to get those first 2 fire towers frozen at the correct point with the very first shot. Kind of like that. I guess you could freeze the first fire tower low, because it doesn't really... You don't have to freeze it that high in order to have enough height to make it up to the next ledge. And we have another power-up with a very annoying jump, if you want to get to it. But I don't really need it, though. I'm almost at full health, and there's a bunch of enemies here that we could use to refill our health if they're kind enough to drop health items. Yeah, annoying thing about keeping track of your score is that they, Oh, that was a very nice maneuver just now. I used the explosion from the block to destroy those enemies, even though I wasn't really aiming at them. So, that's pretty cool. So, this first Mega Man game... Oh, and that's very lucky, an extra life. That's going to be helpful. So yeah, annoying thing about Mega Man 1 is that because it tracks your score, they decided to make one of the droppable items an item that increases your score at the end of the stage. So that kind of makes it harder to get health pickups from these enemies. And knowing my luck, I'm still going to get lots of weapon energy from them too, for refilling weapons. So, freezing that bomb is a very good idea because you don't want it to explode on you and then knock you into the spikes, which will kill you regardless of your invincibility frames. And then we have more of the platforms from Iceman stage, definitely going to just skip those. You need to watch how much magnet beam ammo you have though, because coming up is the only room in the game that requires the magnet beam. There is no way up this column otherwise. I have no idea why they even put it there. It's like this is the only time you're required to use the magnet beam, and it's not good for anything else besides making platforms. So who knows why they put it there? And it's at the end of the stage too. That's very, that'd be very annoying to get this far and then have to go back for the magnet beam. But then maybe that was the point where they wanted you to give up, because this boss, oh man, this boss is so infamous that it keeps resurfacing in later Mega Man games. What it does is that it has to form itself, all those blocks fly over to the right and then form the monster. You have a chance to get one hit, and then all of the blocks have to fly all the way to the left, and then it just repeats this over and over again. But I'm going to use a glitch, because this would take a long time to fight the normal way, and I don't have the energy for that. So we're going to use the select trick. This is another famous trick. If you fire a big weapon like the elect beam at an enemy and then just rapidly mash the pause button, well, first of all, it'll make you tear your ear off because that's a very annoying sound, but every time you pause and unpause, the hitboxes reapply, so you can just hit it a bunch of times in mere seconds by simply pausing and unpausing like that. And I was about to get hit by that bullet, so I think it's perfectly fine to do it that way. Yeah, I just realized, when you fight the regular bosses, there's a chance that you can still get hit even after you've technically killed them, because you still have to grab that little item that drops at the end of the regular boss stages. And then, if there's a projectile still on the screen, it can still kill you then as well, but in the Wily stages, they don't do that. So that's kind of interesting. So, Wily Stage 2 is where we have yet another Mega Man mainstay, boss refights. Yes, the Mega Man games always force you to, for some reason, refight all of the previous bosses all over again. Now, normally there'd be a room with a bunch of teleporters that you could use to choose the order of the refights, but in Mega Man 1, they just place them throughout the castle itself instead. They also do this in Mega Man X1, and depending on what spin-off you might be playing, they kind of play around with the idea of it somewhat. Anyways, there are only two refights in Dr. Wily Stage 2, one with Cutman, and the other is with Electman, which is why I'm switching to the Rolling Cutter so I can fight him the same way. Interestingly, you cannot use Cutman's weakness against him because it was Gutsman's weapon. You need a brick for that. This stage provides no bricks. Anyways, we have a couple of the exploding bombs from Bomb Man stage. Here they're an actual threat. It's very easy to avoid them in Bomb Man stage, but not with this terrain. You might notice that it's the same terrain, but with different enemy layouts. That's kind of an interesting stage design thing. I know recycling rooms is a big thing in the NES days because there's not enough space on the cartridge for defining all of those rooms. Maybe I should have picked up that extra life, I don't know. But why is there that little space over the left with no spikes? What happens if you land there? What are you gonna do? There's no way to... Well, you could magnet beam back, I guess. You're definitely guaranteed to have the magnet beam by this point, so... I guess that is kind of a little bit courteous of them to give you a chance to save yourself from the spikes. What was I talking about again? Oh, right, I was talking about how Thunder Beam just passed over that enemy just now without destroying it. Very annoying. So, we've definitely got a very interesting boss here. There's a lot of effort gone into this one boss for how early in the series this is. It's a copy of you! And it can actually use all of the same weapons you can. It will copy whatever weapon you've got currently equipped, which means if you equip the super arm, this guy can't do anything because there are no bricks for the super arm to throw in this room. So anyways, the best strategy here is to equip Fireman's weapon and use it. Fireman's weapon will not only fire a projectile, it also creates a shield around you. So if this guy decides to try and collide with you, the shield will hit him, and you have to fire the projectile in the air because he always jumps whenever you shoot. Very few of the other weapons are actually decent here. The regular Buster might work, but I don't think it does all that much damage, and the other weapons are either too impractical to hit him with in the first place, or they do a lot of damage to you, so you don't want him to use them. Right, so we're up to Wily Stage 3. This one is short but sweet, and it's got another tricky boss to deal with, so this is going to be fun. The stage itself is not much to speak about. Very basic enemies that you can destroy with your weapons if you've been using them a lot and know how they work. But when you get into this room, suddenly it floods with water and starts pushing you forward. And it's very easy to deal with these enemies here. You just shoot in front of you and eventually your bullets will hit them before they have a chance to touch you. But after the penguins are a bunch of bombs, and these are more annoying because the explosion can hit you, like right here. I think it was just barely in range there, so you might want to slow down a little bit. You can kind of move against the current, but you can't move backwards through the stage. Now, once we're at the end of this tunnel, we are going to come up to the boss. So yes, a very short stage 3. Right, so the way this boss works is that there are going to be a bunch of little machines coming out from the holes in the wall there. There are some bricks that you can throw with the super arm, which might suggest that the super arm is this thing's weakness. And that's kind of true, but you actually want to wait until the very end of the fight to start throwing the bricks. You want to destroy as many of these with the regular Buster as you can because, as I've said, if you throw the bricks but die, when you come back the bricks do not respawn, so it's going to be even harder to deal with this thing if you have no bricks remaining. And the bricks do make for decent platforms because this thing moves around in a square pattern around the room, so I'm just going to finish off the boss with 2 bricks here. So yeah, that's the ideal strategy for that boss. Very difficult to figure out on your first time through, believe me. And now it's time for the final stage, and it's a bit of a doozy, so this is going to be entertaining to at least some people who have never played this game before. So in this first room has enemies. Normally the first room, well, sometimes the first room of a stage will have enemies, but not any that can hit you if you just sit there and do nothing. So we've got more ladders, we've got more enemies shooting you on ladders, and this is an annoying power-up to get because if you destroy the blocks underneath that power-up, it doesn't fall to the ground or anything. It doesn't have gravity, which is weird because all the other power-ups that the enemies drop, those have gravity. But you definitely want to pick that up because you're probably running low on weapon energy at this point. Weapon energy throughout the castle stages does not refill, so you've definitely got to manage it if you want to get through this with as little frustration as possible. And hopefully these enemies will drop some from you. I just noticed that there are a lot of bronze Gutsman statues. Even in Mega Man 1, Gutsman was like this god apparently because they have so many statues of him. Anyways, we got something very annoying right here. It's a Gutsman platform. You know, remember that from his stage? So yeah, we're just going to use the magnet beam to get over it. If you manage to make it underneath to where the extra life is, you will find an item called a Yashichi. I think that's what it is. It kind of looks like sort of a pinwheel or the screw attack from Metroid, but what it does is that it refills all of your weapons energy and your life energy, which is going to be good because now you have to deal with 4 boss refights all in a row here. There are no breaks in between Bomb Man, Iceman, Gutsman, and Fireman. Yeah, that's who it is. No breaks. They don't drop life energy for a refill like they normally would in the later Mega Man games, so this is going to be very difficult. You've got 4 of the hardest guys to deal with without taking damage. Well, at least as long as you're not using weaknesses or anything. Like Fireman here, you'll still take a lot of damage, I think. And I should not have taken that much damage against Bomb Man, but what can you do? Right, so we've got Iceman to deal with here, and I kind of don't want to take any more risks here, so we're just going to use the select trick on him. It works on Iceman too. It works on any of them as long as you can do lots of damage and you have a big enough explosion. Unfortunately, as you'll see right here, I died to Gutsman because I did not have nearly the amount of energy I would have needed to deal with him while taking a hit or two, so it's back to the start of the boss rush. Yes, you have to go back to the start if you lose a life and you don't even have a chance to pick up the Yashichi again. Of course, I wouldn't have preferred having to go through the entirety of the stage all over again. That would have been even worse. So yeah, you're really starved for resources at this point in the game. I mean, most of my weapon ammo is actually running out here. Could very easily lose the rest of it, and you don't even get any free weapon energy if you die or have to do parts of the stage over again. Very painful, like, series of stages and challenges to go through. It's really amazing how crazy hard these games can be if you don't give players the courtesies that they're normally allowed to get in some of the later games. Alright, Gutsman. I've got to beat him without taking any damage, and I've got to use the worst weapon in the game, the Hyper Bomb. As you can see, it's very possible for him to get away from the bomb before it explodes. And I think the select trick works here, but I got lucky and managed to beat him before he could throw that last rock and finish me. Alright, so just the last stretch here before the final boss, and there's like one energy refill here. I guess that's okay. I kind of need it at this point, but the good news is that that energy refill respawns if you die. And it looks like I'm going to lose one more life here because Dr. Wily's little machine here is very easy to... Well, I'm actually going to run into things because I want to start at full health for this fight. Luckily, there's a checkpoint right after the boss rush, so that's fine. I've only got one life left though, and of course, if I'm even uploading this, then it's probably clear that I'm going to complete the game on this run. Like, why would I upload it otherwise? That kind of kills some of the suspense when you're watching somebody play through this. It's not like a stream or anything, because it's being played live. You don't know if they're going to win or not. Unless it's a Kingdom Hearts stream, then you know they're going to win. Anyways, the fire weapon works great on the gun there. You're supposed to destroy that gun first. And I couldn't switch weapons until I had, until the shield had disappeared. That was very annoying. Still kind of an annoying quirk. Now, I've actually heard that on the second form here, you can use, like, the Thunder Beam or something if you stand underneath the gun that's shooting at you, because that's pretty much a safe spot. Very difficult to get hit if you stand there, but I've always used the Rolling Cutter because it gets multiple hits, and I think it does more damage than the Thunder Beam does. But, who knows? As long as I get the job done, then it doesn't really matter too much anyways, right? Now, on a practice playthrough I did before recording this, I actually got the game to crash after destroying the final boss. That would have been very unfortunate if it happened again, to get so far and then be denied the ending that you earned because of a glitch. But yeah, Mega Man 1, kind of a glitchy game, but still, you know, it lays a pretty decent foundation for the rest of the series, I would say. Of course, throughout the series, you know, they keep refining the formula over and over and over again until they're just doing the same thing over and over. So, you know, Mega Man 1, kind of a novelty game, but it's nice to play through. It's nice to see the beginning of your franchise, right? And this ending is just the best, too. Listen to this. Fight, Rockman, for everlasting peace. So cool. And it's in English even in the Japanese version, too, by the way. I have no idea why they did that. You know, I actually know that because English courses are common in Japanese schools, that they kind of expect some English text, even in Japanese games and other media. But, like, the whole game is in English. There's not a Japanese letter in this entire game. Even these names are in English, so to a foreigner it probably looks weird, but maybe it's more normal over there. Who knows? Enough King. Character designer, Enough King. These are all pseudonyms, by the way. This was pretty common back in the day. I don't really know why they didn't want to put their real names here, but we know who they are. Well, except for whoever this name is coming up. Yuki-chan's papa. Yeah. Didn't want to say your name there, huh? Oh well. And now for the glorious appearance of Dr. Light and Roll. This is their only appearance in the original Mega Man. And that's it for Mega Man 1. I'll see you later if I decide to do Mega Man 2.